All right, welcome to your test week. So remember, test weeks are an opportunity for us to check in. I rarely meet an athlete that's one, super excited about a test, or two, really happy initially with their results. So don't do that, okay? So just all it is an opportunity to test yourself, see where you're at. It doesn't define your season, it's just a checkpoint. And like anybody who's ever done any type of scientific experiment or data research, they'll realize it's only one data point on the entire curve. So it's just an opportunity to check in. Now, the tests that are key are the run and the bike. We have a swim test in here, but there's a lot of different ways to test the swim, and I'm not going to, die on that hill. If you have a way that you like to test your swim, whether it's 1,000 straight is another way that people express their TT pace. I usually find that a 1,500 to a 2,000 straight is a little more accurate and predictive of your T pace. 10 100s or 3 300s. There's so many different ways, and they're all pretty good. The best thing is that you are just making sure you're consistent with how you're checking in with that. The swim is there. The bike is the next one, and it is a 30-minute test. I like to do 30 minutes. A lot of times people will hear 20 minutes and then subtract 5%. I do 30 minutes because 30 minutes by yourself will predict what you can do for 60 minutes in a race environment. And a 60-minute race-like environment is actually the true definition of your functional threshold power or your threshold heart rate. So I like to do 30 minutes because it's much more indicative of the actual FTP. Now, it can be challenging mentally. I break it up into 5-minute little blocks in my head, or I'll think of a playlist that I really like that's about 30 minutes long, and I'm just going song to song. Or if you know your approximate speed and you have a relatively fair course, I have no problem if you have like a 10 or a 12-mile course that you can do, that you can tell yourself if you get there a minute earlier or a minute late, it's not a big deal, because it won't be. But you can challenge yourself over that course so that if you like to go over a distance, you can absolutely do that as well too. Once you have your bike zones, you can go into the settings under your thresholds and zones, and you can reset what your thresholds and zones are. And I take the 30-minute average for power, the whole entire 30 minutes, and I only take the last 20 minutes for heart rate, and I use that. Okay, so that's your threshold heart rate, and that's your threshold power for the bike. The exact same thing applies for the run. Everything I just said for the bike, exactly the same applies. If you have a course that's 3 to 4 miles or something like that you like to do, no problem. Just make sure that it's fair and it's uninterrupted. So we don't want to be stopping at lights or for cars or anything like that. And if you want to do it on a treadmill, if you're going to be inside a lot right now, that's another good point too. If you're inside and you're training inside a lot, it might be a little bit different results than if you were outside. So make a decision where you're primarily going to train right now and do your test there. And then on our next test week, you can alternate to kind of see how they compare, but you'll start to get a feel. Sometimes for bike trainers, for example, it can be up to 20% harder to hold watts indoors, depending on the type of trainer, especially if it's not a smart trainer, for you to hold that inside. So don't test outside and then come inside and be too discouraged because you can't hold numbers. There obviously might be a discrepancy. And one of the things that I used to have to do when I would race early season, because I'm from Chicago, is it would be really hard mentally for me to see lower power numbers on the bike, trusting that when I went outside for like a March race, that I would be able to perform the way that I wanted to. So that is something that's not because it's just you, it's just how it is. So if you have a big discrepancy in inside versus outside, that could be normal. You can always check in with our membership area so that you can ask questions or post that comment, or I guarantee you someone else has. You can search for answers there as well too. So enjoy your test week. Make sure you set your zones in your settings, and it's pretty self-explanatory. And again, for the run, I take the pace for 30 minutes or power for 30 minutes, or I take the last 20 minutes of the heart rate. So hope everybody has a great test week, and we'll see you next week.